my Area 51 line. You're on the air. Hello.
Welcome to the Blondes and Booze Paranormal Podcast, where what you've known as reality will be shattered by the truth. Krista and Brandi will lift the veil from your eyes, revealing what has either been hidden or denied you for eons.
A smarter person would have added us to the chat to the thing while the introduction was running, but I'm not.
That's okay. That is perfectly okay. Today has been just fantastic. Our guest for tonight had canceled on us. Krista's having internet issues. So here we are. No topic. No nothing. So hi, everybody. How is your Friday evening?
Yeah.
I think I know where ours is right now.
Yep. It's the end of the month in the title world, so my week has been lovely.
Oh, I can imagine. Everybody trying to finish it up by the end of the month.
Yep. And of course, the thing is, you have like the last day to sign, which is technically today. And by last, meaning most loans have what's called a rescission period. So you've got 3 days that you can, because I focus on refinancing where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like 3 days to sign. You have a 3 day rescission period. So you can say, you know what, I don't want to do this and cancel the loan, right? It's not just a one and done thing. So the last day, the last day to sign and then fund and have it still count for April was today. So yeah, my week's been fun.
Awesome. Mine too. Oh my goodness. I'm telling you what, it's just been I don't know. I don't know if you've been carrying on with my cat saga.
No, I have not.
I rescued 5 kittens from a thunderstorm last Sunday. Mm-hmm. And then we had one the runt that didn't make it. Mm-hmm. And that was on Monday. Well, yep. I lost another one this morning.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I don't know what to do with these cats. I mean, I've spent this ton of money to keep these kittens alive. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm like, I have no idea. I have to turn and look at the mother and saying, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yep. Well, okay, so interesting. Apropos of nothing, obviously we're backed up to a field and there's at least several clutches of rabbits that like to hang out in my backyard, which my dog loves to chase.
Right.
I've run across 2 and they're juveniles, rabbits, because they're already out and about eating grass and all that. But like 2 of them only about like this big. So I mean, actually probably like this. So big enough to, do things on their own. But I found 2 of them dead in my yard. My dog had nothing to do with it.
Huh.
Because she loves chasing rabbits. And if she kills one, she will chew on that rabbit for as long as the thing is still there. She ended up squaring up against a vulture one time because it was trying to eat her rabbit kill.
Her rabbit.
Yep. But so these 2, though, she had nothing to do with, so she won't touch them. They're just dead. So I don't know what's going on, but
I mean, are they just like you can't see any physical injuries or
yeah.
they're just
they just died. Yeah, they just plop and they're done. I got nothing.
I don't know. Things are weird. I don't like I said, I don't know. This week has been weird and I just don't know what's happening, I'm trying to get my stuff together because I will be investigating tomorrow evening at Emmaus Asylum.
Oh yeah.
Which we've talked about before, and this place is absolutely huge. And even though it has been investigated, it hasn't been investigated like no more than 10 or 12 times max. So this place is fresh and it is very, very active. I mean, I have never walked into a place that has never been investigated and these things are just popping up all over. I've been in places where that there was some little bit of activity, but you kind of have to coax them out and teach them how to use the stuff and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And this place is just like, they're flying out of the woodwork. I don't even know what to say about it.
Okay, legitimate question, and I don't mean this to be funny, but just legitimate question. It sounds like it's in like the implication is the more places studied or researched, almost as if it seems to be a drain on the activity. Do they get like bored with people, or are the people like is there something going on that seems to deplete a location's ability to have phenomena occur? Does that make sense? I guess is the question.
Well, I believe that certain locations can be over investigated. Like they're just, I have no idea, but some places they're like, oh, this is the scariest place in America. And I go in there and no matter how many times I investigate it, it's still not as active. I don't know. I think that sometimes the energy gets tiresome to them. They're just kind of like, I'm not going to sit here and play with y'all because I've done this a million times. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm just going to go off about my business and just, sit here. And I think that's what happens sometimes. There's a few places that I've been are like that. Waverly Hills Sanitarium in Kentucky. I believe that one has been over hunted. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's kind of dull. There is no, I guess, real activity that would just grab you and say, hey, you got something. There's a few things, but, I've never had anything really exciting happen.
So then let me throw this proposition at you. Is it possible that a lot of these locations they're overhyped? Like something occurred or whatever, and people, experience, and then in the era that we now inhabit, where everything is cranked up to 11 and everyone's selling everybody on everything, right? Because let's face it, we live in a world of grifters. Is it possible that a lot of these locations have been so oversold and overhyped that when you get there and the experiences occur, it's more of a letdown? Or do you think it's that either it's drained or it's overhunted, to use your terms? Is it possible they're just overhyped?
I think some are. I mean, I really do, because everybody that has a location says theirs, again, is the most haunted place in America.
Yeah.
I don't believe all that. I believe you may have a few things going on. It is haunted, but is it like crazy, like all of this activity, excitement? No. That's why I said I'll find myself falling asleep sometimes because it's like watching paint dry because nothing's happening.
Well, if you want to talk about overhyped, Donny Cho's now in the house.
Oh my gosh. Hello, Donny.
Hello. Hello.
I was about to say with the whole with the whole peace sign, I was like, are we channeling our inner Kawhi, Donny?
I told you I was coming.
Yeah, well, we didn't believe
but okay.
Yeah. Well, you threw up the bat signal earlier, so I was like, you know what?
Yes.
Donnie's stepping in.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I had to. Chris has been having problems, and she even stated that on the show last night that it's been, her internet has been going in and out, and for her, that's unusual. For me, that's normal. For her, not so much.
I heard that Missouri weather. Oh, it's a something.
Or it's her cable company or her internet company, or it's something up
all
there.
Of the above.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, right. And she kind of lives out of her town, just kind of like almost like I do. I'm a little bit more remote than she is, but she's out there, and things happen. Things get old. Things need repair, and I think that's where she might be heading
Yeah.
to right now.
It's a thing.
Mhm.
Real quick, I'm going to follow. I want to follow up our question, but Donnie, just let you know, Nemo Veer has placed a request for K-pop, so we'll do that later. Don't worry, Nemo Veer, I got your back.
Oh, we have entire episodes devoted to that on my show with Jason McLean. Just tune into
Yep.
that. Yeah, entire
Yeah.
episodes. We have a
Donnie
series.
chose
Oh, we
that
can
stuff.
we can still talk about it
Yeah.
just a little bit. But since Donnie, you are the most powerful psychic in the paranormal community,
I am indeed. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
and of course, given
yes.
your affinity for the Asian paranormal world, which seems to be more supernatural rather than cryptozoological,
Right.
the question that we were sort of facing is, she had talked about how Brandi, how tomorrow she's going to go the Emmaus
Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and she said it's only been researched like 10 times, and she said it seems to be fresh. To me, that implied that there are these that a lot of these locations that kind of get overhunted, right? Like maybe all the people coming diminishes the actual phenomena in total. And of course, I push back with just asking the question: is it possible a lot of these places are overhyped? Certainly, that is true. But now I place the question to you, most powerful psychic in the paranormal community: is it given your knowledge of sort of Asian traditions and all that, is it possible that some of these locations that are quote unquote haunted, do people going there diminish the phenomena in some way?
I think the haunting experience depends on the experiencee, meaning it's not universal and objective for each person, regardless of who goes there. For each person, I think it depends on who it is that goes there to experience those experiences.
Mhm.
That's something that I've kind of learned. Like seriously, I've learned. Okay,
Yeah.
Let me give you a good example. All right. I earlier in my show, a few episodes back, I told a story about how I went to this one really haunted bridge in Gettysburg. Right. The Eisenhower Bridge. It's notorious, right? And all of my friends, I went with 3 other people, and everyone was getting touched, and people were being dragged to the edge, and everyone was getting messed with, except me. I was like the only one.
Right.
Right. Here's the thing. Gettysburg is in Pennsylvania. Those 3 people who were experiencing those things were originally from Pennsylvania. Their parents, their families, for generations were based out of Pennsylvania.
Gotcha.
So because they had more of a blood connection to the land over multiple generations, I think it affected them more heavily. Where the spirits see a guy like me, and those Civil War spirits, they ain't never seen a being like this before. They're like, they took one look at me, and they're like, what in the tarnations is that?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I am a being from the other side of the world, a nation that you have never even heard of before. And so their powers were nothing to me. Now, here's the thing, though. If we did the opposite, right? If we went to a really haunted location in like Korea, and I took those 3 people with me, my hypothesis is that it would affect me way more than them.
Okay.
It's
It
possible.
makes sense. That makes sense. And I'm going to tell you how that makes sense to me. Now, there at the Ray County Museum that we always talk about too, Goldie is one of the spirits that seems to inhabit that location. Well, Goldie is a deaf mute. So when somebody went in there using sign language, they were getting more activity than anyone else was getting. Do you see what I'm saying? So I could see that if you have something in common, or like you said, ties to land, or basically speak the same language, perhaps, or something like that. Because I always wondered about that. Now, I have not investigated anywhere that the language was different. Okay. I've done a few things overseas. I've done, a lot here, of course, but I've never been anywhere where the language barrier was different. So I'm wondering Because a lot of people are saying that they're getting like kind of like a translation type of thing when they're using spirit boxes and things like that, and then sometimes they're not. So I don't know how that works. I mean, do they cross? Do they like cross a line, and because they're on the other side of the veil, that they can communicate with us regardless of who we are, or not? Do you see what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. I do believe, Donnie, what you said is right, though. If you have something familiar to a spirit, I believe that they really would gravitate toward you.
Right.
That they would be connected to your energy for sure.
I have been entirely distracted by your dog, Donny. That having been said, yeah, he does. So, but just to kind of riff on the conversation a little bit, I like Donnie's point that there would be a larger connection if there was, right? If there was, then the activity may enlarge. Again, I'm not 100%. I've never been 100% on the idea that ghosts or hauntings are necessarily of human spirits per se, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's more going on, and I am not unconvinced that a lot of hauntings are actually a manifestation of our interest in, or even a collective interest in a particular location or an event or whatever, right? Meaning I'm not unconvinced that oftentimes these things are reflections of us in a way. I don't want to use the word tulpa because, Donnie and I have talked about that. So I don't mean it in that way, but rather I wonder how often we haunt ourselves, because the line between the psychological and the supernatural seems to be much more blurry than we'd like it to be, right? But I do wonder, because I do like this. I find it this concept. Obviously, yeah, there's going to be places that are overhyped because we live in a world of grifters. But the idea that people researching an area actually diminishing its phenomena, I find interesting, because I would suggest it's normally the opposite, right? Like Old Alton Bridge, right? It's like the people, like if it wasn't paranormal before, it sure as the world is now, because of the lore and the people now going there because they believe in it. Like there are multiple Ouija boards painted or etched into the bridge itself now, right?
Oh goodness, yeah, no.
Because of the legend, right? Because of the lore. So in my experience, normally it seems like the more interest there is, the more the activity rises. But again, you tend to be in that realm far more than I am. So your suggestion that some of these really hot places that have been researched a lot seem to be deader than they should be, given, is it possible that, again, all of the activity has drains the area, that it like the people going there in the desire is somehow disrupting the phenomena itself?
I get what you're saying. I really do. Because, I mean, we've talked about people manifesting their own type of spirits. I mean, imagine, all these teenage girls getting together and manifesting something. It's usually a poltergeist, and they end up with more than they can bargain for. But, or it could be something worse. But, yeah, I could see that. And if they're drawing that energy to manifest an experience, stay with me. Manifesting an experience, are they literally not energizing the field but sucking the energy out?
That's so essentially the every time that someone has gone and done the thing, they're not bringing energy, they're sucking it away, to create the manifestation in some way. Actually, Dr. Fox has a similar concept. It says, or the ghost can't feed off us when we're not scared. Is it possible that the lack of fear that you are bringing to the table because you do this more often is actually is preventing? Because again, the weird things that happen around me tend to be far more physical than right? And the stuff that does, and the weird non-physical stuff that only seems to apply when I'm inside a car, essentially locked off, right? Because that's a place of my authority. That's where I have rights to the car. And once I'm in, it's like going inside your house, right? It's like, well, now the thing can move around because whatever. So it's entirely possible that that's, some aspect of it. But yeah, if people are going in an agitated state, they want to be scared, right? Is that feeding the phenomenon? And since you're going and you're not scared, you're not. It's maybe even leaving you alone because, like, well, there's no point in.
I believe that would be true if we were dealing with like the tricksters and things like that. If you don't get a rise, if they don't get a rise out of you, I'm pretty sure they would just eventually give up. But they feed off of other things than fear. They feed off all energy, such as sadness, happiness, any type of joy. They will, they will feed off of that high energy. So
that was my dog. My eldest son came home and she decided to bark at him. So.
Oh man, I wanted to trick the people in the chat, make them think there was a ghost.
What? Blondes and Booze is definitely the animal show. We've had our dogs, our cats, everything on the show. Donny's been on. His dog's been running around doing stuff. It's the animal show. You just bring them on. It's good.
Well, she doesn't like she doesn't like being picked up necessarily, she doesn't like the show. Like she doesn't like being on the show at all. And I had to watch. So my wife bathed her this morning, so she was already a little miffed. And then I had to just before the show, I had to rewash her feet because she decided to try and dig to get at some of these rabbits, and so she was covered in mud. So she's mad at me to begin with. Oh,
so she's a princess.
Yes.
Yes. Just watch me do stuff, but don't touch me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I find that interesting, right? Your point, because again, in my experience, most of the people that I've helped, but again, it could be the problem is I'm dealing with demonic entities in my realm specifically. It's always it's fear and trauma that seems to attract and that these things seem to feed off of.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I guess the question, I think we're going, maybe are we going back to a little bit of Donny's theory that it's more about the connection that you're bringing to the location, and maybe it's also a little bit like, again, all things are pie charts, preferably pumpkin, but then a lot of these big name places are also maybe really overhyped.
What do you think, Donny? Because I know for sure some of them are.
My philosophy is that all paranormal phenomena, like cryptid paranormal phenomena, is all subjective. That's not to mean that it's less valid or less real.
Yeah,
right. I think people who take exception to that statement have a warped sense of what is real because they only think that what is accepted by the mainstream objectively is true. But I think reality is a lot deeper than that. Yeah. So the idea is, right, radio signals, AM, FM, okay? There's radio signals everywhere right now as we speak all around you, but nothing happens with them without a radio, right? Without a device that actually takes that and then creates the sound.
Essentially a spirit box.
Same thing with hauntings, right? If there is no one to experience the haunting, then is a place haunted, right? So like if there's no one to experience the thing, or if there's no camera, if there's no observer, right? You can go to the most haunted location, but if there's no observer there, then is it really haunted? Are ghosts just running around by themselves manifesting even though there's no observer? I mean, I don't think so. I think they require an observer to happen.
We've come across this same type of thing. Hold on just a second, though. T-Bone, thank you for being a member for 9 months. We appreciate you. Thank you.
I was trying to pop that up and it didn't star for me. So yes, thank you, T-Bone.
There you go. Thank you, T-Bone. But that goes back to the bear poop in the woods.
Right.
Does a tree fall? Does a tree make a sound when it falls in the woods if nobody's there to hear it?
Or what kind of sound does it make? Because it could be screaming the entire time if there's no one there to hear the normal.
Exactly. It could be making all kinds of noise that we're not used to hearing. Who knows?
Well, okay, so
Mark.
hold on. I know this is going to get into the. I don't mean it necessarily the way it's about to sound, but I like the simulation theory as a metaphor rather than as an actual thing, right? I think as a metaphor it works, right? Is it possible? Again, is it possible that some things are in video games? You have NPCs, right? And they don't, meaning non-playable characters. Donny knows probably knows where I'm going to go with this. And areas, locations, and these characters, they don't just exist if you're not there. They don't exist if you're, the program knows that they're there, and the program has runs it when you enter a certain location. Like, okay, now these things can exist, and you can interact with them. And then once you go away, they see, that program stops running.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Is it possible that, again, metaphorically speaking, that's kind of what's happening here? That maybe, to Donnie's point, if there's no one there, maybe they aren't just. If we take the idea that perhaps hauntings aren't what we think they are, since we don't even really understand what the universe is, right?
Yeah, they're like a Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah. Is it possible that the reason there's an interaction is because there's a person there to have an interaction with?
Right.
And again, like I said, I think I'm convinced a lot of hauntings are not necessarily spirits. Again, not all of them. Nothing's ever 100%, but I'm starting to wonder if a lot of these things are more reflections of us anyway.
And that's not to say that those ghosts or spirits don't exist. It's just changing the nature by which they operate, right? Those ghosts need an observer to manifest, because without an observer, they're a fart in the wind.
Well, you got to think of it this way, especially in places that have their own energy conduits, such as underground running springs, or you have limestone, or just naturally occurring thunderstorms, or anything to put that energy in the air. I believe that they still do what they do. It's just they don't interact with us.
Right.
There was a question out there. Do they interact with each other? Now, I can't say that they do or they don't. I have some evidence that leads me to believe that they can.
But the ones that don't, it seems like, right?
Right. It's like I had a spirit box and we were asking questions, but we were having two separate voices that kept coming together. But it was more like they were talking to each other than answering whatever questions we had. Right. It was like almost their form of communication, talking to each other, or something that we were picking up on. Thank you, Mickey.
Or almost as if, like, if you're tuning through a radio, right? If you have two stations right next to each other, they kind of bleed into each other. Or maybe one station might bleed in, but you won't see them bleeding in from, like, one AM station bleeding into an FM station, right?
No, because when we're doing the
completely
sweeps,
different,
right? When it's sweeping through, all of the channels, because it doesn't stay put. It just keeps sweeping. That it's only on AM or FM. We do not do both. Now, we have tried to do something similar by using one spirit box on FM, one spirit box on AM, to see if we could recreate this or get something going that way. It has never worked for me thus far. Just saying. It was good to try, a lot of people use the Estes method, of course. Basically,
which I'm not a fan of, but please explain for the people in the chat who may not know.
Right. On the Estes method is where you deprive yourself of all your senses but your hearing. So you deprive yourself of, your smell's still there, but your sight and your inability to feel anything, because you have to sit there still. You can't touch anything, can't do anything. And all you can do is hear what is exactly coming out of the spirit box. People ask you questions from a distance. They're not right up on you. You can't hear them. All you can hear is this, whatever comes out of there, sweeping through the radio stations, and whatever it says, you just kind of spit it out. Well, we've had two different people in the same room spread apart on two different frequencies doing the same thing. And we've had some success with that. But they were, it was a little bit, it just wasn't overwhelming success with it. I don't use, when you said that about the Ouija boards being actually carved into these things.
Yeah.
That just brought up a whole new ball of wax for me, because do you think that that's going to open a portal for right there?
I am not unconvinced that we are the things, that we are the portals. To Donnie's point, right? That, if we're not there to interact with, are they there? The spirit may not be able to, these things, the supernatural realm is an ecosystem of differing beings with different authorities and powers and agendas, right? I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these things couldn't interact in the world if we weren't there to interact through.
Right.
So and again, particularly when you're talking about demons specifically, not necessarily, something can be demonic and not a demon. Demons can't take physical form, so they have to move through a human. Yes. There are demonic entities that don't require that, though. And I do think there are things that can take material form. So, I think if it's something higher up the food chain, so to speak, then yeah, our presence may be completely irrelevant in the equation. But some of these other things, we may be the conduit through which they actually affect the world around us, right? It may be that we are the portal. That let me upset some people real quick with this one. I've had this conversation several times with. I won't name drop on this one. And I think we disagree on it a little bit, but I'm convinced that most magic is, and I don't mean illusions, right? I mean real magic with a K. Yeah, occult stuff with a K. Yeah, magic with a K. The true occult stuff. I think the actual practices, by and large, 90% of it is window dressing. Not that it is more that what it's ultimately about is giving these things access to us, now reality, through us. Everything else about it is window dressing to give us the sense of control. Now, the elements that seem to be kind of universal, I think there's something to that element of it, but it seems to be far more culturally driven and culturally derived than something that would be objective, right? Because again, look at Donnie, we've talked about this a lot. Look at how radically different many forms of magic are, right? Like there's definitely points of contact, but when you look at the broader, all of it's window dressing to give you a sense of control over the situation, rather than the rite itself actually being. In fact, because why? Since the points of commonality are almost nil, just in points like blood, like the use of blood or the use of things that are the use of cultural taboos, things like that. Those seem to be universal, but everything else is entirely culturally derived. It makes me wonder it makes me think that a lot of this stuff is more window dressing to give us a false sense of security so that we will be open to becoming those conduits for these things.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. Do you believe that people can manifest something demonic, or will they have to use like a ritual or something like that to summon that? I mean, could it be just as easy as wishing for something, or would we have to do more?
I think there needs to be, in my experience, there needs to be a degree of formality. However, it does appear that just even general interest can allow things to manifest. In fact, here I think I've told this story live. There's a gentleman who was an artist who was working in like 2 a.m. on a monster thing, right? comic or something. And he said he looked out the back window, like he was working downstairs in his living room, and he turned, and there was a thing watching him do this. Right? So I'm not entirely convinced it needs to be overly. I think to be taken control of. Yeah, I think, or to, because requires at least a degree of formality. But it seems like these things, we can become the conduit in ways that we are not fully aware of. That in somehow, because the thing that this monster he was drawing is now standing outside his window. And I don't know if Donny, if we've talked about this on your show. I know I've talked about it on Dean's show. There are the story of John Constantine from the DC Comics, from Vertigo Comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is, and it's Constantine, not Constantine. Though everyone calls him John Constantine, and just because most people can't say it. Anyway, long story short, he was created by, and I just forgot his name, Alan Moore. There it is. Who is an actual practicer of the occult. He and other people who were writing for these Constantine stories, when they were writing the book Hellblazer, and then other times, many of them have described running across John Constantine in real life, not someone cosplaying as John Constantine, not someone who just looked like him. They said there would be a moment when they would look up and they're like, it's him. They knew it was him. And he acknowledged the writer. And usually there was some sort of, hey, you want to come with me sort of moment. And of course they've all were like, nope, I want nothing to do with this, because we're writing his stories. We know this is not someone we want to be involved in.
Right.
Or involved with. It would be one thing if it was just Alan Moore, but it's multiple people, and there are other events or other similar accounts of fictional characters seemingly coming to life, and not just someone looking like them or someone, but it's like that person somehow is interacting in the reality that we're in. So I am not convinced that we can't become a conduit in ways that we are not fully cognizant of.
Okay. All right.
So, but again, it's like, but it does look like a lot of this stuff is window dressing to give us a sense of control, because it looks like you don't necessarily have to do all of the things to have quote unquote magical or supernatural things occur. It's just something that we are supernatural beings that is also a physical body. We're both. So we, being the amphibious kind of things that we are, seem to also become conduits for things. And again, I don't like using the word tulpa, but people know what I mean when I say it. It may be that we have the ability to, again, we haunt ourselves. Is it that perhaps our constant thinking about or talking about things gives power and gives rise to things? And perhaps the universe, perhaps our universe actually can reflect that back at us, and that's what we're interacting with in a lot of instances.
Can I give you?
Nemo Veer asked the question: is it only occult characters? No. The Shadow. Well, you could argue the Shadow is to a point, but yeah, other characters have shown up, like the guy who created the Shadow and wrote, I forget his name off the top of my head, and the home in which he worked for years, people have recounted seeing the Shadow in his home. Also, Superman actually has popped up. Like, people have talked about seeing characters like that. So anyway, continue.
I am
Donny.
so sorry, guys. It is starting to storm outside. I gotta go save the cats again. I will be back just a moment.
Go.
All right,
Probably.
we'll
But
be here.
what I wanted to put on with that is yeah, I mean, I could see what you're saying, Jason, because I mean, people hear a little knock around the house or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, that's my grandma or that's my
Yeah.
grandpa or whatever," and that may not be the case. And
Mhm.
if they put all of their energy into their quote unquote grandma or grandpa or whatever, that
Mhm.
they may be putting that energy into something that could manifest or become something bigger because they're believing in it and giving it that. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the times that people are to blame for their own hauntings. For me, I believe that this has been happening to me since a child, and I didn't ask for it. You know,
Mhm.
as a small child, I didn't ask for it. It was just
Mhm.
something that was, uh, I guess, the third eye. If you want to talk about the third eye, my third eye has been open, and you know, these things just kind of come because they gravitate, yeah, you know, to somebody who sees them, they hear them,
Mhm.
and they're like, they want to be heard, they want to be seen. Um, but then there's other people again that think a little knock, or you know, maybe your house settling just a hair, and you're not used to that particular sound. They think that their house is automatically haunted, and then, well, guess what happens? They actually manifest that
Yeah.
into existence. So I don't know, but hang on, I'll be right back.
Go save the kitties.
I had to go save the kitties.
Okay. Can I give you my extra woo?
Yeah.
Um, like
Go
little
for it, Donald.
framework there. Okay.
Yeah.
I like to harken back to the Edgar Casey example and the Law of
Mhm.
One example, because
Okay.
in both of those sources, you know, you and I have talked about both
Oh,
of
yeah.
them. I know your thoughts on Edgar Casey and
Yeah.
the Law of One.
Yeah.
Right. So, one of the questions that was asked to both of them was, what is the other side like? Right.
Mhm.
Because that's a question I would want to ask. Like, what is
Yeah.
it like? Like, if you had to describe what the other side is like in our terms, and both responses were, it's really hard to describe. And the interviewer's like, why is it hard to describe? And then Edgar Casey specifically, I remember reading one of his readings. He's like, if I were to describe what it looks like from the other side, I would basically have to describe to you a reality where space and time do not exist.
Yeah.
It's your reality, right? Your reality, but imagine your reality, but there's no time. Like, time doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right? You can't even wrap your brain around that. You can't even
Mhm.
envision what that's like, because we're just defined by space and time. The other
Correct.
side is not defined by space and time. Let me give you a real quick example, okay? An example I remember Edgar Casey using.
We've got time. You
Okay.
give us a long example.
All right. He gives the example of, imagine if there's a guy who's every day he went to the same job, right? Had the same routine. One day he dies, right? And then his ghost does the exact same thing because it's the same routine, right? Same daily routine. Go to work, do its thing, come back home, right? And then maybe 100 years later, someone goes to that house to do a paranormal investigation, and they see that ghost. And what is he doing? He's getting ready for work. Now, you may ask, how could a ghost be doing that for 100 years, right? But you got to remember, on that side, there's no such thing as time. So from that ghost point of view, it's still Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right? Those ideas are so divorced from one another that we can't even wrap our brains around like what it's like to be on that side, because all we know is linear time. And some people may imagine that them not being defined by time or space like that is like their advantage over us. But us being defined by linear time might be our advantage here, in that they can't manifest on this side because of the linear space and time.
Right.
Right? That's what locks them out. That's what keeps them from like manifesting like all day, every day, and just like living day to day, right? Because I thought about that example, and I started thinking back on all the different stories of paranormal and cryptid encounters and UFO encounters. It kind of makes sense. If you think of it in terms of this phenomena is not held down by the confines of space or time, like we are, linear space and 3D, or 3D space and linear time, if it's not confined by that, then a lot of these ghost stories, a lot of this psychic phenomena, a lot of it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like when people talk about Bigfoot teleporting, I mean, from that point of view, it would be really easy to teleport, right?
Yeah.
Like, remember the Rob story in the bar when he saw those ghosts from like the 1920s all drinking in his bar?
Yeah.
They're acting like no time has passed. I mean, obviously, because on that side, time literally does not exist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. The imaginary axis, it's a channel dedicated to like comic book stuff, so
Yeah.
feel free not to go frolic over there, but I like his channel. He had a really great analysis, and I was already kind of there, but I like how he said it in a way that the supernatural or the world of the divine, right? On that side, like you said, it's not limited by time or space. Also, it's probably not even limited by the three-dimensional universe that we inhabit to begin with. So the good analysis, the good sort of equivalent or metaphor for us to understand how weird that universe is would be us talking to the original Super Mario, right? The 8-bit 2D platformer, and saying, hey, Mario, why don't you just go around the pipes and the turtles? That word around has no meaning to him.
It doesn't exist in his vocabulary.
It doesn't exist in his universe. In the same way that if something from a higher dimensional plane asked us, hey, why don't you just move septward? Right?
Right.
We'd look at you and say, what? We'd look at this thing and say, what are you talking about? Sept meaning 7 and ward meaning like direction. There is no 7th direction in our universe, but there may be if you're on that other side, if you're on that veil. Which goes back to my point. We don't even understand how this universe works.
We don't even understand how this universe works.
That's what I'm saying.
Let
This
alone
universe.
that universe.
Forget that. This universe. So much of the Bible is taken up by God trying to tell us how different he is from us. There's a lot of time spent trying to explain concepts as and ideas through story and metaphor and events to show us how different he is. It's very possible that a lot of this stuff is so radically different we wouldn't understand how it worked if we were told. Right? To the idea that, again, time and space, if time and space doesn't exist on that side, then there may not be a way for us to understand what's happening.
We wouldn't even be able to wrap our brains around it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that's absolutely true.
So again,
that's why I find a lot of people making this mistake in the chats, in these shows, us, like everyone. A lot of people in this whole scene, they make this mistake. They try too hard to like kind of pigeonhole the veil or the other side as if it were like a world that is defined by space or time. Paranormal phenomena, ghosts, cryptids, they try to pigeonhole them in a 3D space and linear time kind of box. But I think that thinking is flawed. Because I think if we were to really try to understand where the realm that this stuff is coming from, where our brains couldn't even wrap around it.
I don't think so.
No.
And it's just so hard that, I mean, because we're all looking for answers. I mean, you know, if anyone were to say, hey, I don't believe ghosts exist, I'm going to be like, you're wrong. I've seen them. You know, there is no way other to explain what I've seen. Same thing about Bigfoot. You can't tell me I didn't see it. I saw it. You know, I'm not here to make you believe what I'm saying. I just keep trying to wrap my head around. I don't want to say the truth because that's too broad. I mean, my truth. What is it going to take for me to understand why and how this happens? That's my question for me. My truth.
That's why I think that this whole concept, Brandi, of like what's objectively true. Like people always say, well, where's the proof? I mean, okay, the whole idea of getting objective proof means to take something from that other side that's not defined by space or time and try to force it down to our level. That's not going to happen. That's why there's not going to be any objective proof Because even though you have objective proof, the objective deciders, the people who decide what's objectively acceptable, aren't going to accept that as proof. They're going to be like, nah, it's fake. Nah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're not even going to accept the proof, so it doesn't even matter. So it's never going to be, there's going to be objective proof. It's
well, okay, so and actually we've had this conversation. I've had this conversation a lot with Dean, right? Because he's a true Fortean. He doesn't believe that any of this. He's more where Donny is, right? That none, that all of it, and he would throw all cryptozoology into this same field. Whereas I would say there's a difference between a naturally occurring cryptid and like a paracryptid. But his whole point is, because he's a true Fortean, meaning that all this stuff is outside of our ability to observe and measure. Therefore, you trying to utilize science to understand it is inherently doomed from the start, because it can't understand it. Because science is about this stuff, right? Things that exist within our universe and can be observed. We can poke it with a stick, metaphorically speaking. It's like this stuff exists outside of that box, which means any attempt at creating or trying to obtain scientific proof or even scientific observation is inherently doomed to failure, because it can't be scientifically observed. Right? Like, what's the question we've asked a bunch of times on this channel when you've had me on, or the misfortune to have me on, is when people talk about the it's like, well, we have the EM field readers, and you can see that the EM spike is. It's like, okay, well, great. Here's the problem: you can't tell me if that KP meter is spiking because it's observing the entity in question, and the entity in question is made up of some sort of electromagnetic, is made up of the EM spectrum on our side, or if that EM spike is the wake of the entity, like the entity moving through our universe is creating this EM wake, or thirdly, that thing could be jacking with you by playing with your EM meter, because it's like, this is the way I can jack with him. And that reader may have nothing to do with anything. It may not be reading anything per se, but the thing is like, I'm going to poke you because I can. We can't answer that question. Like, we ain't got the Spookatron 5000. There's no way to objectively measure. Now, I think this is where I would differ with Dean. I think there's a way to say we can scientifically prove a phenomena exists to a point. Like, this is not, I think we could probably prove that this isn't entirely in someone's head, right? I think that's about as far as we can really go. But I'm with everyone on this. We can't actually know what it is scientifically, because this is something that falls so far outside of the box that there's no point, right?
I think a caveat I have to add to all that, though, for me personally, while I say the objective deciders most of them would not accept proof, I think at the end of the day, this phenomena is provable. We just have to rethink, like, how to go about it.
We have to frame the question differently.
Yeah, you would have to frame the question differently, and you would need to have a different approach. I think it would take a concerted effort of science and mysticism, psychics, mediums, remote viewers, but also legit like science people. They would have to work and see, but that would never happen, right? Because one group doesn't accept the other.
And again, on the whole point of people not accepting, there's all kinds of things. It's like, people won't accept actual video proof. They will go out of their way to deceive you about things, right? Donny and I were working on the new video. The people who were trapped in space for 9 months, right? They will take the photo of before they left, when they're wearing the blue outfits. That was them before they went to the space station. And the white stuff is the one that is from the SpaceX thing when they were returned. They'll take those pictures, they'll switch them around and say, oh, look at how much good that they, because like particularly the woman, when she went up, she was tan and she looked but when she came back, she was suffering from being in orbit from 9 months.
Right.
No sunlight. They take those pictures, they reverse them and say, oh, no, when she looked healthy, that's because that's when she came back. Right? We can't even get people to accept evidence of things that aren't all that weird.
Right.
Like we can't you're asking them to accept quote unquote evidence of things that exist outside of our reality. It's that's the biggest fight, because again, where the money is right now is in a materialist universe.
Right.
That's where the big money is. Anyone, and this is, I don't want to get too lost on this point, but we know that some things that have come out is we know that the CIA and intelligence agencies and the government writ large have actually suppressed certain forms of studies in certain in physics. Meaning there were whole schools of physics that were getting ready to be popped up and people were working on, that the government shut down through the universities. Like, no, y'all can't even talk about this. Now, some of that's probably gone on behind closed doors, but certainly not publicly. Right now, all the money is in a material, is in an exclusively materialist universe. Now, the problem is we are getting to that point where they can't hide that anymore. That's no longer a viable solution, which is why they've started talking about interdimensionality and stuff like that. So it's going to take a change it's going to take a larger change in the money more than a change necessarily in people's perspectives. It's not, I think there's a lot of scientists who'd love to do that kind of work, but the money's not going to support it, so they won't.
Right. I mean, when I investigate and something happens, I will do everything that I could possibly think of to debunk it. And when I say debunk, that doesn't mean that everything is going to be explained. When I debunk something, okay, we know why that happened. But it gets to a point that all I can do when investigating the spiritual realm is get it to a point to say, well, I can't explain that. I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you what it's not. That's it. I mean, there is no true way to know exactly what we're dealing with. Like you said, Jason, I mean, we could be dealing with something we don't really want to, and actually, again, manifesting that sort of thing. I believe you're right that people are doing these things, whether they know it or not. I have no idea. I mean, this is, you're giving me a lot to think about, which is making me stubborn here. Because I'm like, well, what if, you got to mull these things around before you say them out loud. And I'm just sitting here going, well, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Because you can't make people believe in your evidence. All you can do is present it and go, here you go. And that's it.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of times and a lot of reputable people that have put things out there, and then people are trying to debunk this. And I'm like, where is the credibility anymore, people? Where is it?
I know how to prove Bigfoot. I know how to do it. I figured it out. It's going to take a lot of resources. It's not going to be easy, but after years of listening to Bigfoot conversations, I figured it out. This is how you do it. The perfect strategy. Are you ready? The perfect strategy?
Ready.
I'm ready.
Lay it on me.
You take every living, like old school Native American elder or shaman there is in this country. You offer each one a buttload of cash. And I'm talking a buttload, okay? I'm not going to give actual numbers, but like a briefcase of cold, hard cash, and you ask them, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to this really active location. Now, the researchers and the psychics and all that, they will be on the outskirts, on the outside of the woods, but like find a really hot spot, right? But the researchers will be on the outskirts. Outside of the woods, you get that elder or shaman to go in there, do whatever ritual or mystic communication they need to do. And here's the kicker. The camera you give them the same camera that they use in the Patterson Gimlin film, that old school tourney Feel
Mhm.
me? That, right? Because if you do that, you can rule out the possibility that maybe there's something to do with the camera technology. Maybe that's why maybe that's why it doesn't work. The one camera we know that does work, assuming you believe in the Patterson Gimlin footage, is the
Yeah.
one that they use. So you give them each that one. You tell them to go into the woods. That's how you get Bigfoot. That's
Well,
how you get in.
I get it better. I got one better for you.
Okay.
For $20 million, I will prove Bigfoot exists. I may prove it from Aruba, but I can prove it.
How
For
would you
$20
do
million.
that, Jason McLean? From Aruba?
From
How
Aruba.
from Aruba?
Just saying.
How?
Maybe Tahiti.
Yeah.
Fiji. I don't
Fiji.
know.
Yeah.
Something.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, is there some truth to what you're saying, Donnie? Absolutely. I mean, if you got out there with people who know the land,
Yeah.
know what's normal, know what's not normal. If you had that type of, I would say, guide,
Mm-hmm.
and would that make an experience possible?
I mean,
I don't
think
know.
about it. Every Native American elder or shaman seems to know everything there is to know about Bigfoot. So let them have at it. Let them have at it.
Okay, I know. Again, Donnie's going full Donnie on this one, but I will say this.
I do think it would theoretically work.
It would theoretically work.
Yeah.
But let me be serious for 2 seconds on this. Not that I haven't been serious before. My previous comment was clearly facetious. Although, if you have $20 million and you'd like to give it to me to prove Bigfoot, I'll do what I can. All you have to do to prove that Bigfoot exists is simply say, "Hey, as a government, we know." If the government came out and said, "We know Bigfoot exists, it's okay to talk about it." There are. And I gotta be real vague. I gotta be so vague on this. There's evidence that is non-public, photographic evidence that is non-public, that is better or at least as good as Patterson Gimlin. There are a lot of people who have this evidence, who have these photos and videos. The problem is they'll lose their careers if they release it because they don't want to be the crazy person who believes in Bigfoot or has the. As soon as we have, and I hate to say it, either I would really like for it not to be a body. If we can have a good, solid video evidence with like DNA evidence and say, look, here's the DNA from the creature on the video, boom, it's real. I think we'll have at least a dozen to 50 different people whose names would be maybe not recognized by everyone, but would be recognized by their field of interest.
But if that were the case, Jason, then I would imagine then like every other park ranger would have like a Bigfoot story.
There are many park rangers that do.
Absolutely.
How come you don't see park rangers involved in the Bigfoot cryptid community? Like people who work as park rangers,
because they are currently working as park rangers, and they don't want to be.
The same thing as if they were a police officer or somebody with authority. You're not supposed to say stuff like that.
Thank you, Tennessee Ridge Runner number 2, numero dos, the sequel. Appreciate you,
Thank you. But I mean, the government hasn't said it, but there are certain places that do say it, that Bigfoot exists, such as there is a conservation pamphlet out of Florida. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've read it. It's under I think it's like wild boar in this pamphlet, but it speaks of Bigfoot in the small print, and it is in the actual conservation pamphlet. So they're letting out all of these leaks of these things existing. But again, I believe it's going to be like the UFO. They're going to wait decades before they're going to admit this. Do they have information? Yeah, I believe they do have information. I mean, they probably have all the evidence that we all
Mhm.
wish we could get.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think a lot of, and again, not to get lost on that into that conversation too deep, but I think a lot of this stuff tends to be the government knows less than we would imagine, but they are very okay with people talking about certain things so long because it keeps us preoccupied on something that they want us to not talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, as much as everyone likes to say, hey, look, the government doesn't want us to know about this or this, they're happy to let us talk about it.
Yes.
We know this is not a question or a rumor or a conspiracy theory. There was a name, and I will not say it. And this was 4 or 5 years. Well, definitely over 4 years ago. It was before COVID. I'll say it that way. There was a member of the CIA whose name was released with some things. If you said his name on YouTube, the episode would be pulled immediately.
So what's his name?
I'm
No.
not saying it. I think you can
No.
actually.
Donny?
I'm not saying it. Yeah. Hold on, real quick.
I thought I was
That's not
gonna
the
try
button
to
I was
make him
going to
slip.
push. JG, thank you for the $20.
Oh, thank you, JG.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, silence is golden when you want to keep your livelihood. Yes.
So
that is so true.
Damn, are we
So-
screwing ourselves by talking so openly about this stuff?
not necessarily.
Am I screwing myself out of a promotion down the road, guys? That I'm talking
probably.
so
I
publicly
don't
about
think
Bigfoot?
talking about it. I don't think talking about it is the issue. I think it's when you start producing the evidence
Okay,
to the
I am
right
producing any of
people,
that,
and
yeah.
you get that
Yeah.
somebody gets your, you get somebody's, the wrong person's attention. I think that's when you
Yeah.
run into issues.
I just did an episode on Bigfoot erotica, so I don't think the government really cares what I'm up to. They're like,
No,
yeah,
they
whatever.
don't.
Yeah,
They
I'm not on any watch list.
know you're full of it, Donnie. That's just
Yeah,
that's it. They're just like, well, whatever. This
they
guy's
probably
way
encourage
trash.
it. They're probably like, yeah, we need more guys like that to make this more silly. You know?
Yeah, they're like Donnie's way off track. We're not worried about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry
Well,
about me. I'm innocent.
And that's the kind of thing is I think a lot of things aren't what we think they are, or the things that are being hidden aren't what we assume is hidden, right?
Right.
And that's the bigger point. I think they're happy to let us talk about some things so long as again, they don't care how close we get as long as it's off by even just a few degrees.
Yes.
Because as long as we're doing a snipe hunt, they don't care, right?
Right.
Like the question that was, again, I hate that we keep going back to it, but it's just such an easy and sort of obvious thing to talk about, right? Epstein and the island, right? Pizzagate originally pops up, and it was the truth in the core element was there. It was the James Bond stuff that everyone was chasing, and as long as you were chasing the James Bond stuff, you never actually hit anything, right?
Right.
Because you got people firing guns into the bottom of pizza parlors instead of just saying, hey, there's a guy that everyone knows is doing this stuff, and it's right there, and it's public, and everyone knows, right?
Right.
You missed the forest for the trees. But even within the story of Epstein, what it appears is, I really highly recommend Mike Benz's work on a lot of this stuff, because he came out of the State Department and USAID and all that. One of the things he pointed out, and it was like, it clicked. There is, in another report had mentioned, there is no such thing as the Epstein client list, because that's not what was actually happening. Not that there weren't things going on, right? And I'll stay vague because this is a family show. The thing that we all talk about, and the thing that Ghislaine Maxwell went to prison for, it did happen, but that's not what it was about. And as long as we stayed focused on that element of it, we missed a much bigger picture and a much more profoundly disturbing reality. Because again, as long as they can just keep us focused on one thing, and we miss the ramifications, which is that Epstein was CIA. Again, I recommend Mike Benz's work on it. He goes through all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot, but what he was not what we think he is, or is not what we think he was. There are individuals who are like, well, clearly this is about political corruption. Kinda. right? Not, and we're moving beyond Epstein for a second. There are, I won't get into, I don't want to use names because then we get lost on other things, but it's like, there are people who are like, okay, well, this is clearly about political, this is just political corruption and people making money off of their connection to the government. That's an element. And as long as we're focused on that, it's fine. But it's like, why would these people talk about, oh no, it's what I was doing was patriotic? Because it was the CIA. The CIA sends criminals to do certain things because, I want to stay vague. You want to send a criminal to deal with criminals, right? Like, some of these criminals are going to do things, and it's better to have a known criminal to interact with them on your behalf. There are things that go on in this world that are far worse than we realize, and we've been sold out in ways. Well, it applies to everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
As long as we're focused on the Bigfoot phenomena in one way, the publicly accepted way, I think they're perfectly happy for that, because I don't think they give a damn one way about Bigfoot or not. But as long as we're chasing that snipe, the way that's publicly accepted to chase the snipe, and as long as we don't put the right things together, then they don't care. They don't care what we come up with. And I wonder how much of all of this, the paranormal, they're like, yeah, we know stuff you don't know. We're not going to tell you about it because we got other reasons for it. But as long as you're doing this stuff, I think we're missing something in all of this conversation. That, and again, I don't think the government has as much power as people think they do. They're not nearly that organized. But as long as we're busy over here and we're missing this key element over here, I think they're happy to let us talk about it. Now, because it's a heat sink, right? If we weren't allowed to talk about it, then we would know there was something there.
Right. As
long as there's a heat sink, and as long as that heat sink is going in a direction that keeps us from discovering what they don't want us to know, then we're fine. Then they're fine, right?
Right. I did. We had this conversation last night with Doug Hychek, and we were talking about DNA, Bigfoot DNA.
Yeah.
And, because some people have claimed to have got some.
Yeah.
I'm like, but if you had some, this would have been blown wide open a long time ago. If it weren't, presented correctly. Let's just say that, if it was presented correctly. But a lot of people are holding their results or whatever, quiet, whatever. I have no idea why. I don't know. I'll share anything that I've got. Any evidence I got, you got it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that if we all share evidence, we're good. But
which is why you should follow her on Only Squatch.
The Only Squatch, that's it.
Yep.
So we came up with a great idea that if we come across some DNA, that we're going to send it to like 23andMe or Ancestry.com or something like that, to see what he would come up with.
They'll be the first ones to lie about it, though. They'll be the first ones to lie about it. If it does turn out to be Bigfoot DNA,
yeah.
They'll be the ones, yeah.
I mean, would that be the first indication that we'd have some type of human DNA? Probably.
But there's reason to think.
Or to come back contaminated.
Anyway.
Yeah, if it comes back contaminated, then at least that's something. But a lot of those, I'm not a big fan of any of that. I think a lot of that is
bullpucky.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a way of saying it. Yeah. There are scams, and then there's 23andMe. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They wouldn't admit it. If it did turn out to be Bigfoot DNA, they would not admit it to it. They would find a way to mess with it.
It'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah, it would.
What they would say about it. You know what I mean?
You would need to get an independent lab, like a trusted independent lab, which is hard to come by.
I was going to say, where's one of those? I mean, honestly, a trusted independent lab. Because, if they got their hands on something like that, do you think that they wouldn't share that information? Absolutely.
The problem is everyone who is capable of analyzing DNA is owned by some major institution.
Corporation. Some type of corporation. Yeah. So, I mean, when people say independent lab.
Yep, that's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah, that's where everything gets sticky. I mean, where is it? I mean, people probably do have some type of DNA, but where are you going to take it?
Right.
we saw this with, and again, this is not a. I'm not going to run anyone's name, but I think we all know what I'm talking about when I say the Bigfoot DNA thing that happened a few years ago. I say few because I'm getting old and I don't want to do the math on it.
Yeah.
I am not unconvinced, which is the difference from saying I am convinced. I'm just saying I don't. I think this theory is still in the running because of what I know. Because I went to school in Nacogdoches. I knew who she was prior to all this happening. I think her results were legit, but the problem is I think there was something being pulled on the community writ large, and a lot of people who were interacting with that and were caught up in it didn't realize what was happening. Which is that because like the Matilda, the photographs for where the DNA supposedly came from, straight up, and anyone who argues with me is going to lose. That was a Chewbacca costume that they dyed and modified. It's obvious that's what it was. And I had felt weird because before everything had come out, there were drawings on the website that I'm like, that looks an awful lot like Bigfoot, or that drawing of Bigfoot looks an awful lot like Chewbacca, but whatever. And then we saw the photographs, and I'm like, that's a Chewbacca mask. It's a good Chewbacca mask that they've dyed and whatever. But that's a Chewbacca mask. End of conversation. And it's like, but I knew, again, I think the DNA was actually legit. The rest of it wasn't, because I think this was an organized attempt to discredit the entire movement. Again, as long as we don't see, there's something in all of these things that we're not supposed to see. And as long as we don't see it, they don't care what we believe. Like, they don't care. As long as you don't, like, what would happen? I've asked this question before. What would happen if we weaponize the power of autism, and all the people who are so worried about whether or not we landed on the moon or whatever actually went through their city's spending bills? Could you imagine what would happen if all the people who had time to actually just said, hey, I'm going to go see what my city is spending money on, and then pulls all that information and puts that in front and says, hey, why are we funding these things? Could you imagine what would happen if how much things would change if that happens? I think a lot of this stuff is designed, as long as there's a question to be pursued, we're not looking at the things we can change. And that may be the bigger point. Like, it may be that they're not keeping Bigfoot under wraps per se, because he changes the way we view reality. It may just be because as long as they're looking at Bigfoot, they're not looking at the receipts.
Well, I mean, everything in life is designed to distract us from the receipts, like our jobs and our mundane day-to-day existence. I mean, entertainment. We don't need Bigfoot to just keep our minds off the deceits. I mean, plenty of people don't believe in Bigfoot, and they're also plenty distracted, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean like K-pop?
But K-pop is different, because K-pop offers true insight into how the paranormal and the spirituality works.
But I will tell you this about the K-pop question.
Yes.
The answer is no, we're not going to talk about it, because there was a lot of people that said, please no, not K-pop.
We're not going to
They're using reverse psychology on you, Brandy.
Yeah. And besides,
They're teasing you.
Half of Donnie's channel is K-pop.
Yeah.
If they want K-pop, go watch Donnie's
Mickey's
channel.
like, oh no, K-pop, but at the end, but the thing is, she's also winking at you. She's like, oh no, K-pop. Yeah.
Well,
we
if
have
you
several.
want K-pop, Donnie Cho says stuff right here on YouTube. Go look him up.
Oh, I know. Little Patty likes the K-pop. Every time I do a K-pop episode, she's always there. She's always
and she's
there.
probably saying the same thing.
I know little Patty's winking at me right now on the other side of that screen, being like, no K-pop, no. Wink.
Yeah. Wink.
Yeah.
Well, we have some great comments and questions, though, that we should probably get to before we...
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that.
BJ Lapierre, author and illustrator, says, Donny, I heard that parts of the Pine Barrens are on fire. Are you going to go help and save the Jersey Devils?
Heck no. The Jersey Devil is evil, guys. He deserves what he gets.
There you go. There you go.
Donny says no.
Mickey G with the $5 said, hit that thumbs up, show the panel some love. Yes.
Thank
You
you.
should hit the thumbs
Thank
up.
you, Mickey.
And share this out. Inflict us upon your friends.
Yes. Inflict the
T-Bone.
pain.
Inflict the pain. You should not suffer alone, people.
No.
Misery
Get
loves
other people
company.
to watch this with you.
Yes. T-Bone does ask, Brandi, when you get time, can you tell us who will be at the Emmaus Asylum tomorrow?
Oh, I thought that said E-Mouse.
Emmaus. No, it's the Emmaus.
Oh.
Emmaus event is a private event, so I can't give you that information, but Krista and I will be there for that event.
Well, there you
It's
go.
private, though.
Oh, man. I swore that was
Oh.
E-Mouse. I was like, is that like related to Dead Mouse?
No. It is a cousin
Mighty
to the
Mouse.
Flater Mouse, though.
Yeah, spelled the
Mighty
same way.
Mouse. Yeah. Mighty Mouse.
So Brandi, I'm kind of curious now, though. This E-Mouse Asylum, how bad is it there?
Hey, little dog.
I don't know, Donnie. You'll have
It's
to come
bad.
with me one time.
It's an asylum. A lot of craziness must have gone down there.
You'll have to come one
Oh,
time.
man.
My dog has decided that she needs love. Oh, hold on. The Tennessee Ridge Runner, the sequel, has given us $20 for not doing K-pop.
Don't worry, we'll do K-pop on my show,
Thank
guys.
you.
And thank you for that advertisement, Ridge Runner. Thank you for encouraging people. If you're curious about K-pop, check out Donny Cho Says Stuff every Saturday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern.
You'll learn
Thank you
more
for
than
that.
you ever wanted to know.
Thank you for the
It's true.
K-pop plug, Tennessee Ridge Runner. I know you support us.
And T-Bone is sharing out
The
Donnie's
Bigfoot erotica episode. I do have to feel like of all of my episodes, that Bigfoot erotica episode, definitely top 3.
I cannot believe it's a thing.
Top 3.
I can't. I honestly
Rule 34, Brandi. Rule
Now,
34
Brandi,
of the
okay.
internet.
If someone were to offer you, you would be earning, let's do a modest amount, right? An extra $5,000 a month. Extra $5,000 you could use. I could use it. Jason, could you use an extra $5,000?
I could use an extra $5,000.
And all you gotta do is like twice a year come out with one Bigfoot erotica novel. Would you do it?
I just don't.
I
I
would
don't
do
get
it.
it. I don't
would
get it.
do it.
Now, there is the werewolf type books. There is the vampire type books, but these have a human form.
Bigfoot kind of makes sense in the erotica way.
No,
It's
it
like just
doesn't.
a big human
It
dude.
doesn't. I can't. That whole I can't,
Yeah.
Donnie. I just can't.
No, see, for me,
welcome,
the stuff
Amy.
that doesn't make sense is the Tyrannosaurus erotica, because I'm like,
Yeah, it's weird.
that doesn't even anatomically make sense. How does that even make sense?
What was it? Shape of Water, where she
She hooked
interacted
up with like
the
a
fish
man?
person? Yeah, with
Like
the
the
fish
creature
person
from the Black
Yeah, that's what I'm-
Lagoon?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no.
No,
No.
sorry.
No.
Last comment, and I think this is definitely worth ending on. Phil Funk says, "Did you hear about the Wi-Fi wedding? The ceremony was awful, but the reception was great."
There's another dad joke, and Jason loves dad jokes. He really
I
does.
do. Yes.
I don't know, everyone. I mean, this episode has really given me a lot to think about. It's always nice to talk to people with different views, and because you won't know everything unless you open up to it. You won't be able to learn anything, and you'll be stuck in that same rut if you don't open your mind and see what other thoughts and theories and things that are happening. So that's why I appreciate you guys so much, because you always talk me around the circle, and I'm sitting here going, huh?
And guys, as personally, I got to speak personally here. As the most powerful psychic in the paranormal community,
yes, Donnie.
as it pertains to this talk, I would just like to say, you're welcome.
All right.
All right, everybody. With that being said, we'll see you next week. All right. Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Is there somebody pressing the button?
I'm trying to push the button. Hold on.
Hey, Brandi, it's your show. You should push the button.
She can't push.
All right, Jason, push the button.
I'm trying.
Okay, so listen.
Okay, I'll push the button.
The
Okay,
Crossing
I got it.
Conference button.
Oh, wait. I see it. I see it.
I'm pushing it. No,
Okay,
I'm
he
pushing
sees
it.
it now.
I'm pushing it.
This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks. With an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to Eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.